Lawmakers heard some startling testimony about close encounters at a congressional hearing on UFOs yesterday. They were descriptive but unverified claims that the military has been hiding evidence of alien spacecraft from the American people. So our Scott MacFarlane was at the hearing and has the details. Good morning, Scott.
Hey, Anne-Marie, good morning. Talk about a rare sight. Media from across the world tucked into a U.S. House subcommittee hearing room, crowding around the witnesses as they entered and they departed. You don't see that very often here. The claims made inside certainly created a buzz. Just like at the movies, turns out there's a line out the door when Congress talks about UFOs, also known as unidentified aerial phenomena as well.
Do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
Yes, and here's why. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had.
A U.S. House subcommittee called 3 military veterans to talk about their close encounters.
I know the exact locations.
Former military intelligence officer David Grush testified he suspects the Pentagon is covering up a decades-long program to retrieve crashed objects.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
The Pentagon has denied Grush's claims. And then there was the uncorroborated testimony the U.S. is in possession of alien material from crashed UAPs.
Biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
2 former pilots also detailed their own experiences with mysteries in the sky.
This object was estimated to be almost the size of a football field.
It was perfectly white, smooth, no windows.
Congress, which for decades has avoided the topic of UFOs, signaled it's considering new requirements for federal agencies and the Pentagon to open their books on the more than 360 UFO reports made since early 2021.
And I want to trust that the American people will be able to weigh the evidence and make up their own minds.
This is becoming a uniquely bipartisan issue. The Senate this week will consider legislation that would require the National Archives to release regular federal reports compiled about UFOs. Anne-Marie, they're making the argument that these mysterious items in the sky are, if nothing else, a danger to U.S. military aircraft.
Okay, Scott, then tell us more about what the concerns are for the witnesses and the lawmakers. If it's a danger to U.S. military aircraft, then you would think the military should handle it. Why do they want transparency so that the general public can know about it as well?
Well, members of Congress have been unequivocal about is that there is a need for transparency in all federal agencies on things big and small. That the public is ready and willing and proper to share this information with. That it's not something that should be hidden. I spent most of the day yesterday trying to talk to these witnesses and talk to these members of Congress about what is the takeaway, what happens next because of this. Take a listen to some of that. Do you think anybody's mind was changed because of this?
I think they will when they see this. They see those men. They're not just some random people off the street. These are, they're highly educated, highly intelligent, and very brave.
And the U.S. House will likely create some of its own new legislation, bipartisan legislation because of the hearing, just making that transparency argument that the Pentagon, the intelligence officials should share what they can with the American public, that Americans are ready for whatever is in those records.
So here's the thing that I couldn't understand about this hearing. All the people that testified, had some kind of personal experiences. And usually at a hearing like this, there's at least some sort of, expert witness, somebody to put things in context, give you data points. There was none of that. So I'm wondering if there was enough heard to shift the perspective of any of the skeptics out there.
But there was a sizable audience for this. Media across the world were carrying this. It was a very crowded room. You saw the hallways outside. There were people listening and engaged. But yeah, whose mind would be changed when you have 2 eyewitnesses detailing some unclear narrations about what happened, in some cases back in 2004 or 2013. It happened some time ago. The third witness, who was part of a Pentagon task force at one point, and alleged that the Pentagon is not releasing information that even its task force was seeking about possible evidence or reports about UFOs. He was even alluding to stories he'd heard from others, accounts that were third party, not his own empirical data. It did have a feel at times like those late night AM radio shows where
Right.
you're hearing accounts from the third dimension, but it's not firsthand accounts. It got an audience. It's just not clear to me whether it's going to change people's minds or affect change.
Look, I was a big fan of Art Bell when I was like 14, but now I need a little bit more, right? Need a little more evidence. Why now is there suddenly this uptick in interest in UFOs? As you point out, it's a bipartisan concern. What's happening now?
Some of this is a snowball rolling down a hill, Anne-Marie. The Department of Defense has released some images of some of these unexplained aerial phenomena in recent years, which has whetted the appetite of the public to learn more and whetted the appetite of members of Congress who always like to push the Pentagon to release more information. It's like their default position. We want more information from federal agencies. It's part of the role of Congress to push for such things. UFOs are also one of those topics Congress can pick out of obscurity in the middle of a busy July week and get the nation's attention. Congress likes to have an audience. What's more, I think they know it's a sweet spot for their constituents. They can't go wrong talking about a topic that is of interest to their constituents who may not be excited about the daily minutia of tax policy, infrastructure, or regulations. This is something that actually maybe their constituents will listen to and engage in.
Politicians craving attention, no mystery there. Scott, thank you very much.